this opening music thing. I'm pretty stoked.
Hey.
Welcome, welcome, new friends and old. I am Jacqueline. This is Augustus. He doesn't want to speak for himself at the moment.
I am Augustus.
I am Augustus. Thank you for joining us. This is episode 22 of Synth Friends because we decided to keep track. Didn't know it was going to have episodes when we started, but it does now. And we're just so glad that it's evolving. So this is like second and third generation Synth Friends at this point, because these are friends of early Synth Friends that we had on. So anyway, this is going to be fun. Oh my gosh. We have a lot of friends in the chat. Thank you so much for the 7 months of subs. That's amazing. Incredible. Unbelievable. Wow.
Dang.
Ah, look at that emote storm. That was cool. I know I saw Danielle was in here and also subscribed for 11 months. Like, I'm having a hard time keeping track of all of these milestones.
This is the smile of
Next month
someone
will be...
who just got all those subs.
Isn't that crazy? I just realized next month it'll be a year since we started streaming on Twitch. And we just hit 500 followers. So that feels like huge milestones worthy of some celebratory streams. So I think we need to talk about that in the Discord and see what we want to do, because I think a giveaway is in store as well. So thank you all so much for being here. I'm really excited for tonight's stream, and we're going to bring our synth friend in right now because we have a tight hour we got to fit this into, and I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Microwave Buddha, for the follow. Welcome back in.
Hey.
Thank you so much for being here. We have our new friend, Jared, so we're going to get back into the Zoom call here so we can bring him in and have some fun talking about space whales. I'm so stoked. All right, let's make sure this works here. Can I do this? Yeah, welcome in everybody. Longtime subs. This is so cool. All right, I don't think here we go. Do we come into everyone? Hello, hello.
Ahoy, hoy.
Ahoy, hoy. Yay.
Hey.
Oh, we're getting some emote explosions. Thank you, Make Mistakes, for the 2 months of subs. That means a lot. I really appreciate that. We're new friends, and we've really gotten close very fast.
Yeah.
So it's so cool how that happens with Twitch. So welcome into the Emo Explosion Room. We have a lot of enthusiasm about space whales, but we do want to introduce you before we get too far ahead of ourselves here. So welcome in, Jared. Your project is Ice Locus, but there's so much more to you than just that, but also there's so much more to your music than I can just fit into this hour stream. So I don't know how we're going to cover it all. We're going to do our best. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're at, how that speaks to your music, why you call yourself Ice Locus, and welcome.
Sure. I'm Jared. I'm from Winnipeg in Canada, which is like, it's about an hour and a half drive north of like Minnesota and North Dakota.
Okay.
So it's like winter here, like 6 months of the year.
Yes.
So hence the name Ice Locust. But I mean, winter's like my favorite season of the year because, no allergies, and you can go skating and snowshoeing and stuff.
Absolutely.
So that's sort of Ice Locust, like, and also like when I go on trips and stuff, it's cool going to like glaciers. I just love the ice. Cool. So that's sort of how I picked the name Ice Locust, like ice location. So yeah, and yeah, like how I got started on this whole thing, like it's been like a sort of a rabbit hole for the past like 5.5 years, like. Musically, back in the day when I was in like, school and as a teenager, I played trumpet in band class. And then after like in grade 12 and then onwards, I played guitar, like just like, electric guitar, classic rock, like Van Halen type stuff.
Sure.
And then
this is the pipeline. I see where we're going.
So then I sort of like plateaued with my guitar abilities. And then, for a living, like I'm a engineer who does metal 3D printing. So like I 3D print stuff, like everything from like medical implants to like aerospace parts. But like I'm a nerd, right? Like a space nerd.
Ooh,
Uh,
welcome to our world. I'm so happy you're here.
That's so awesome.
Space
That's
nerds
so
unite.
interesting.
yeah.
But
So
you're
then,
actually an engineer, so I'll default to your
Yeah, I'll drink to that.
your expertise. We're gonna
Cheers.
cheers to you and your space nerddom.
thanks. um, yeah. So then, about like in 2017, I discovered a guy on Twitch named Jonathan Ong, and he's like this super uber talented like musician. He's like a doctor in music, like with like for classical piano, but
Ooh.
he's literally surrounded by like 40 keyboards and synthesizers and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
you could give him like any song you want, and he'll learn it within like minutes, and you'll have like this cool live loop orchestration type thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we
So
gotta
like
shout him out, right? What's his Twitch
uh,
username?
Jonathan
Do
Ong, I think it's just Jonathan Ong.
you know? Okay, we'll find him.
Yeah.
That's so cool because you were saying that was someone who's like doing the online, like doing music online, building community online.
Yeah,
And, like you were
he
able to see
basically
what that was. Yeah.
he does it for like a living.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's crazy. I saw his stuff, and then what was I doing there? So I sent him like where I was hooked is I sent him a request to play a Yanni song.
Yes. Okay.
So, and he like literally learned it in like 7 minutes, and then he like was live looping it with different like he plays the piano and the flute, and then he
Wow.
has like all these like synthesizers and VSTs and stuff, and he can make like a big orchestra.
Right.
And like within minutes he has this live loop going of his own arrangement of the song.
Oh, that's
So
so
then
cool.
Whoa. Okay, I found him. I
Yeah.
put it in the chat just so everyone
That's
has a
him.
reference there and give him a follow
So
because that's definitely sounding. You're really painting the picture for me here.
yeah, so then that's where the gas happened, you know.
Sure.
Well, one of his instruments was a Rolly Seaboard, and
Mm-hmm.
I thought that's cool. So I started looking up videos online of the stuff, and it's like a
Yes.
squishy keyboard, but the guy's like playing an electric guitar, like whoever the demo is, some
Mm-hmm.
virtuoso guy is like playing an electric guitar on this keyboard, and he's sliding around. And I was like, oh, I play lap steel. I mean, like, how hard can it be? So I went and I ordered one, and I don't play piano. So then it came, and I was like, oh, this is sort of like I have to know how to play the piano to like play this thing. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to learn. So then I ended up getting like sort of I went all in. I got myself like a digital grand piano, and then I started learning how to play the piano a bit, and then a lot about like music theory, because when I played trumpet it was just one note at a time, right?
Right.
So on the piano you can play like chords, and like you're playing like multiple voices of
Yes.
the whatever your ensemble.
Right.
So I had to start learning about chords and chord progressions and stuff. So I went down that rabbit hole. So then now we're into about 2018, and I thought, well, maybe I should start trying to record some stuff that I'm doing. And because what I found was like, you know, you're playing the piano, but I found it was more like memorizing. And I'm like, what if I made my own stuff? So that's how I sort of started going down this pathway. So in 2018, I started like recording little clippets of stuff that I was trying to write, using VSTs on my computer, and that was cool. And then I started getting into like sampling. So for work, I was doing a lot of traveling, so I'd be traveling different places, but I'd bring a little like audio recorder, a little Roland R07 recorder. So I'd take that with me, and then I'd record random stuff.
This is
so
where it begins.
So I started doing that in like 2018, and then 2019. By that time, I thought, well, I need a real synth now, because I've been using like, you know, stuff on the computer, which is great. You can do crazy stuff on the computer, but I wanted something that was like sort of, you know, like an analog synth or something. So I was looking at,
Can't relate.
I was looking at Moogs, and I found the Moog Grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reason I got that is because it looked very like retro and like if you see here,
Yes.
there it is.
A
Yeah,
grandmother
so you
shot.
have the one that has the colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this was before the black version of it.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
So I got that, and
Well,
that was my first dip into
You're
synthesis.
hooked now.
So I went and what I learned from synthesis was from the manual. So I read the manual and I figured out what the different things did. But I was like super busy and I didn't really play that much for the first, basically through the end of 2019. And then in 2020, I went on a big trip. I went to New Zealand to go check out what's down there, all the hobbits and whatnot. So
Absolutely.
I went there and I brought my recorder and I recorded like some waterfall sounds and things like that, right?
What a place to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was amazing. So I recorded all this stuff, and of course I took tons of video on my phone, and then I could just extract the audio from the videos. Then I came back, and like 3 weeks later, everything shut down for COVID.
Just in time.
So at that point, I was like, oh, okay, so I don't have as much to do now because I'm not going out anywhere. So then I thought, well, maybe I'll get more into this sampling thing. I have these sounds that I recorded from all over the place. Maybe I'll make some sample instruments and maybe post something on the Piano Book website, which was just new at the time. Do you know what the Piano Book is? Or
No. Do you?
So it's sort of like Spitfire Audio. Some of the people there, they started up this sort of community of composers where people just sample things and then they make like virtual instruments out of them, and then they upload them for free onto this website, and then anybody can share them. So you can play pianos, you can play like weird sounding instruments from like all over the world from people just sharing this stuff.
That's awesome.
I'm
Yeah, I didn't know
grabbing
this. I
this.
didn't know about this. I mean, like it's cool that this exists.
Oh wait, I think I found something different.
Yeah, it's called pianobook.uk.co or something.
Yeah. Right. That makes so much more sense.
Gotcha.
So I started. So at that point, that's when I opened up my.
Oh, there's space imagery on the front of this website. I'm sold.
I have no idea.
Yeah, we're gonna post a link.
Yeah, so that's when I started up my Ice Locus stuff because I wanted to I wanted to make an instrument and then post it online. So at the time, I thought I'm gonna be a sampler, sampling stuff. So that's what I did. Is I went and I made an instrument. I went and I took a recording in 2019 at work. One of the machinists was machining something out on the shop floor, and he was doing something weird, and he was screeching, and I was like, "What is that?" So I ran outside and I took my phone and I recorded the sound, and then I like EQ'd it all at home type thing, and then I took like a pot lid and a wooden spoon and I hit it together, and I got this nice, almost like a sine wave, like a pulsing type sine wave, and then I put it into like pigments, and I started doing granular synth, mixing the two together, and it made this sort of like epic sounding sound.
So epic. This is so epic. I'm just thinking like our forefathers could only dream to tier a sound at work and put it and turn it into granular synthesis after work that day.
So that was my beginning of like the sort of the going down the rabbit hole of like granular synth and like sound design stuff. And that was cool. So I posted it, and so I made a YouTube video, and people seemed to like it. So then at that point, I saw a thing on Moog was releasing the Subharmonicon, and I saw a video of Lisa Belladonna playing her Mothership, and I was like, what is that, right?
Oh, wow.
She has like this stack of like Mother 32s, DFAMs, and like Subharmonicons, and then I think she had like a grandmother and a matriarch.
Yes.
And like a wall of synths, right? And I was like, that's so cool.
Of Moog.
And the like the reason I got the Grandmother is because I thought, well, that's way beyond me. Like, but I thought this is almost like Eurorack because it's like already
Sure.
put together for me, right?
Totally.
Like this, it has a few modules in here, and I'll put it
Yeah.
together. So then I went and I sent her a message on Instagram. I'm like, oh, I'm thinking of getting into like modular. What should I do? And then she responded, and she's like, she recommended like a Mother 32 and a
Mhm.
Patch and Tweak book.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh.
So
There you
I
go.
got the
Isabella
Patch and
Donna
Tweak book.
recommend pack for everyone.
There you go.
I
Yeah.
love it.
So I got the Patch and Tweak book, which is insanely good. But I didn't get the Mother 32 because my heart was set on the Subharmonicon. And it's
Mhm.
sort of mathy, and you have like these like subharmonic things, like oscillators that go down. Like you divide the frequency by some number, and then you'll get a new sound that's lower.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm.
And then it also had like polyrhythms where you have like two 4-step sequencers, but depending on the rhythms of the lengths of everything, they like overlap and make sort of like a almost like a
Like tape
mathy,
loops and
yeah,
things with like, yeah, unpredictable.
like
Polyrhythms.
yeah.
yeah, so polyrhythms, galloping type
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
melodies, right? So I ordered that at the local music store here, but then it was on back order for, at least a month and a half or whatever.
Right.
Mhm.
So in the meantime, I went and I started looking at the Patch and Tweak book, and it said something about VCV rack, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm so glad
what's
you found that.
VCV rack, right?
Mhm.
So I googled Subharmonicon and stuff, and this video came up on YouTube of Omri Cohen,
Mhm.
and if you know him, he's sort of like a VCV guru type guy.
Yep. Yep.
So he did a video on make a Subharmonicon in VCV rack, and I'm like, well, I'm
Mhm.
still waiting for my Subharmonicon to come. So I followed along with the video. I had no clue what I was doing because I didn't know anything about Eurorack. So I followed along the video, the tutorial, and next thing I know, I had my own Subharmonicon in my computer.
Yes.
And it was so cool because then I made I had one of the modules in VCV Rack was like a matrix mixer, and the ones where you just push a button and it like changes the patches.
Mm.
Mhm.
So like if I just push a certain button, it would change like the polyrhythms and whatever is going on.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, this is so cool. So then I sort of went down. I got distracted, and instead of doing like sampling and stuff, I got into sort of like the modular stuff.
Mhm.
So then finally my Subharmonicon came, so that's it right there.
Yes.
And I hooked it up to my Grandmother, and I was like, whoa. Because before the Grandmother was just like, oh, it's just a mono synth, and you can make some cool vintage type sounds on it, right? Some synthy sounds. But then when I hooked it up to the Subharmonicon, I realized it had way more potential. Because I could
Yes.
use things from one thing, like from the Grandmother,
Mhm.
and like control things on the Subharmonicon and vice
Yeah.
versa.
Mhm.
And that's sort of what opened up my modular stuff.
Yeah.
So then in the meantime, another YouTube video that wandered across my stream randomly was it was of an art installation, like a sound art installation of these metal plates hanging from a ceiling with transducers on them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And here it was Sarah Belle Reid,
Yes.
and I had no idea who she was or
Love the
anything.
twist.
Yes.
Yes.
Like I didn't know she played trumpet or that she was into
Mm-hmm.
synths or anything, right?
Yes, that's right.
But one of my summer jobs back in engineering school was working in a lab that did acoustics and vibration stuff. So I used to put like transducers on metal plates to like try to figure out what the thickness of it is or looking for cracks or whatever. So when I saw that, I'm like, she's putting transducers on these plates and doing weird stuff. And so I went and I sent her I left her a comment in the video, right? And I was like, oh, this is so cool, what did you do for like tuning them to certain pitches, or did you tune them to certain pitches? And then she's like, oh no, it was just sort of random, whatever we could find, but it turned out okay. I was like, oh, that's so cool. So then I like followed her type thing, and a few months later, I found out that she was just starting up her learning sound and synthesis course. That's
Oh,
an
great.
online course teaching modular synth using VCV Rack. And
Mhm.
then she said, because we had chatted before, and she's like, "Oh, would you be interested in joining?" I was thinking, well, sure, because I mean, the stuff I was watching online, like with Omri's videos, they were like way far beyond me. I mean, I was watching them,
Mm.
but I'd have to slow them down so slow to figure out what's going on. So I signed up for her course, and with it's great because she starts off at like you need zero experience,
Yeah.
right? So that's where it all started for modular, and she has like a thing even before the first section of the course. She has like a thing on synth history, like electronic music history,
Yes.
so like all the Daphne Oram stuff and all
Oh,
Yes.
that,
yeah.
like all the and then all these different the buklas and all the stuff that I had
Mhm.
no clue. I'd never heard of the stuff before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of like a history lesson to like learn about this stuff,
Right.
and then learning about sound itself, which I already knew about because I've been doing like sound stuff for a few years now,
Mhm.
and I also like I'm a nerd, so like yeah, I already know about it, right?
I'm good on sound.
Yeah, because when I played guitar, I remember you could play different harmonics by touching different
Mm.
fret wires, and the way
Yeah.
the standing waves are and all that stuff, and you dampen certain
Absolutely. Guitar is a
frequencies out.
gateway to synths. Absolutely.
Um, yeah, so then I took that course, and in the meantime, I was like full on Instagram watching other people's modular setups, and I
Mm.
started following uh, artists like State Azure from the UK. I don't know if you know who that is.
No, I don't
Um,
think so. Now I'm gonna look it up.
it's State Azure. He's uh, he's into like both modular, but also he does a lot of stuff in the box.
Gotcha.
Uh, and he does a lot of live streams where he plays very like some of the stuff is like very Tangerine Dream type
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
music.
Like
So
improvisational or just
yeah,
kind of long form epic?
uh,
Wow.
both.
Okay. Well,
So
yeah. I mean, that makes
South
sense.
coast of England. My
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
favorite
so
place.
he is like playing like all this cool like on the spot. Like he'd come up with like these live looping things, and he ended up using Bitwig. So
Oh,
okay,
okay.
now that as his DAW. So
Mm-hmm.
now jumping back, at the end of Sarah's course, she has a workshop about build your own hardware synth,
Mm-hmm.
which like in
Mm-hmm.
so you can come there and ask for advice and try to figure out what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But she's like, you don't have to do hardware. You could use everything in VCV Rack.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But the whole reason I got into like I started getting into Eurorack was because I wanted to connect VCV Rack on my computer onto like with my other synths, like my
Oh yeah.
Subharmonicon and my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right.
Um, so I went and I got an ES9, and then I got a case, and the case was like, you know, so much. It's so big, and I just can't leave it empty.
Right.
And then I
Stuff
went from
happens.
there,
It's
and
like a
my
bag
first
of
module.
potato chips. You can't just have one, like
Exactly, right? Well, it would just look wrong if it's all empty. Like, so, anyways, I had is it Dofer? Is that how you say it?
Mhm.
It
Well,
had
sure.
a 3D joystick, and I had a VCA matrix from I think it was 4MS,
Mhm.
because from my VCV rack thing, I was using similar things for switching up patches on the
Uh-huh.
fly without
Mhm.
having to like repatch the wires. And that's how it all started. Um, so then, but up to that point, I'd only like written stuff that was like maybe like a minute and a half long or whatever.
Oh.
So
Mm-hmm.
I'd never done anything like longer than just coming up with a few ideas and
Mhm.
just sort of exploring that. So then I was watching State Azure, and he started using Bitwig, which was like this DAW, and you have this clip launcher feature. So you can record little loops of yourself playing, and then you can launch them. So what I found was it was almost like, I could go and play a certain patch, record it, and have that looping, and then I could go and like have a whole bunch of these loops, and then it felt almost like conducting an orchestra.
Yeah.
Because I would go and I'd like launch different clips, and I could like do whatever I want now. And now, since I had these little things that were looping it over and over, but I could switch it up on the fly. I was making pieces that were longer than a minute.
Yeah.
And then just around that time, Sarah started up this. She's had this thing for a few alumni of her course, saying it was like a creative mentorship program. And it was a group session thing of like her and then 7 of the alumni from her class, and we could work on whatever we wanted creatively, like whether it's like sound stuff or visual art stuff, but since we're all from the modular course there, there's some synth stuff in it for sure.
Yeah.
So then that's when I didn't know if I had time to do this, but I thought, well, why not? I'll sign up and we'll see how it goes. And then we had to pick a project. So I'm like, well, I've always wanted to like make an album, but I've never gotten around to it because I've been too busy and stuff like that. So I thought, okay, my project's going to be an album.
That's really
cool. That's how it all sort of started. And how her course worked was it wasn't really a course. It was like every 3 weeks we had a Zoom call that was like 3 or 4 hours long.
Oh, wow.
And everybody would present what they've worked on like from the past 3 weeks. And then we would ask for feedback from other people on, certain aspects of it. And then people could give feedback. So that's how I started my album. And I had this, I wrote one song, right? And I did it in VCV Rack. And then I was chatting to Jono on Instagram, and I was saying, oh, I'm just learning modular. And he's like, oh, that's so cool, right? And this is Jono Wells, who was on like from like a couple weeks ago here.
Yeah, exactly. The web of Synth Friends. We love it.
And he's like, oh, what kind of music are you into? What are you making, right? So I went and I sent him like a private like SoundCloud link of my stuff. And he's like, oh, this is amazing. Oh, this is so awesome and stuff. And I was like, oh, thanks. And I was telling him about how I was doing this. I was trying to make this album type thing with part of this project for Sarah's thing.
Right.
So he thought that's so cool. And then 2 weeks later, I get a message from him. Hey, do you want to play on the Modular World Anniversary show?
Yes.
And I was like, like at the time I had 3 modules. I had a joystick,
that's right,
a VCA matrix, and ES9. I had nothing to make sounds with. So then I went and I mentioned this in our group calls, and then Sarah's like, oh yeah, you should just do it. Like, even though it was like beyond me, right? Like I never thought I'd be performing. So that's what I did is I went and I had to like totally redo my whole workflow because I was doing a lot more stuff, was like recording it into the DAW and then arranging it. And for this performance, I wanted to do it live without doing that.
Yes.
But the thing is, I didn't have that many modules.
Right.
So then I got a Morphogene like right away because I saw Todd Barton using it on one of his streams. And so I got a Morphogene, and I had ordered a Instro R-Bar before, but it was back ordered forever. So that's why I sort of got the Morphogene, because I want something granular to play with that was sort of live.
Yes.
What type of module is the Instro?
It is a granular synth.
Granular synth, okay.
Yeah, an arbor.
Gotcha.
It has like 6 different buffers. They're like 10 seconds each maximum. And then you can play, it's granular, and you can play it forwards and backwards. You can pitch it up and down, and you can
Ooh,
modulate everything.
that's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, I hadn't
Yeah,
heard of that one, so I was just curious.
yeah. Check it out. It's spelled Arbhar.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Getting a lot
pretty
of good
cool.
tips here from you today. This is good.
Yeah.
Good
So
stuff.
I went from there. What was it? Anyways, long story short, I had to work on this what am I going to do for this this modular thing. So that's when I went and I came up with this set, and I was looking back at it. It's sort of like a synth buffet. So I was throwing everything into it that I had, right? So I had like a lap steel and an ebo, and then I was using that as an oscillator. So I went and I had that patched into my Eurorack, and I was using that like an oscillator.
Oh, okay.
So like here's one of my lap steels here, and then
Nice.
you just have like a slide, and then like you're just like dragging it along, but with the ebo on it, it's
Mhm.
acting like an oscillator. It's like
Right.
vibrating the string.
Yep.
Mhm.
So then I could, just by sliding this along, I was controlling the pitch of my so-called oscillator, right?
Yes.
And
Mhm.
then so I went and I also I in the meantime I had got a hydrosynth, and I was using that as my sort of like polyphonic synth, and that was I was using that for background pads and stuff like that.
Right.
And um, anyways, long story short, I did the performance and people seemed to like it, and
Yes. No surprise.
I thought, oh, it's so cool. And uh, on the interview with Jono, he's like, "Oh, what are you working on?" I'm like, "Well, I'm sort of working on this album, and I've done like literally 2 songs so far, or 2 pieces." And then it's like, "That's so cool. You got to finish this. You could die tomorrow," type thing. That's what he said. And I'm like, okay.
Yikes.
So I'm like, okay, well, I'm shooting for like summertime, like maybe like July or August. So then I had a deadline. So I'm like, okay, I want to get this done by like August. And in the meantime, I was starting to explore more experimental type stuff. Like, I got some friction mallets, these things.
Yes.
And I got contact mics. So I was clipping contact mics onto things and just like
Oh, here it goes. Here it goes. You've slid all the way
making
down.
making noises. And then I had it, I was recording them and I was hooking them up to my synths and everything.
It's a
So
whole world of
that's,
discovery. Yeah.
yeah. So like I had an old fan, like an oscillating fan,
Oh yeah.
like a cage, and I like hooked on like a thing onto there, and I got a bow, for like a stringed instrument, and I was bowing it. It was making these weird you know weird sounds, almost like a water phone.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Wow. Yeah.
And so I went down like some crazy rabbit holes trying to make sounds out of like contact mics and then synths. So then with all that stuff, I ended up making this concept album called Beyond the Loci, which I ended up releasing in August.
Wow.
And
Right on deadline.
well, I was scrambling the last little bit of it, trying to get it done, because I wanted to get it done before the summer is over type thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Exactly where with the winter that you get, of course.
Yeah. So what did I do with that? I released this album, but the album was, you're starting off in like space, like in the middle of
Yes, this is what I was reading about. The
yeah.
journey
So
of your album.
you're starting off like out in outer space somewhere, and you're surrounded by like intergalactic type sounds. I know there's no sounds, but what would space sound like, right? So
Exactly.
it was like very spacey, and that first track was the thing that I had sent to Jono, and that's what I did there. and then it takes you. You're flying through hyperspace, and then I had like my Moog Grandmother going like womp 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 and making like, and then I used my instrument that I made out of the screeching machine shop,
Oh,
the milling
yes.
machine. I used that as sort of like a drone in the background with these like sort of eerie screeching while you're flying through hyperspace.
Yes.
That's cool.
Oh, you're speaking our language.
Yeah, so then the next track is I come to like this planet, this strange planet. You drop out of hyperspace, so you have like this boom, like a boom, sort of like Star Trek type thing, right?
Yes.
And then you're orbiting the planet, and you end up going through this atmosphere, and it's just like it was a noise patch that I made with like cross modulating stuff, and it was just like super noisy, and it was like you're going down, like you're entering an atmosphere,
Mm-hmm.
and then you splash down into an ocean, and you're surrounded by whales, right?
Right.
The
And
space
these
whales.
yeah, and these whales are singing the same song that you heard out in space. So that's
Oh
weird.
wow.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next track, you're like in like some sort of underwater. Well, you're in like a cavern or something, and you're surrounded by dolphins where
Oh,
your
yes.
ship ended up, and they're making all kinds of weird sounds and stuff. And then there's like an earthquake under the water, and then uh, and they get sort of scared away, but then they come back after the earthquake. And then the next track is you're on like a beach somewhere, and that was like samples I took from like I went to I was in Lake Superior, like, and I had been recording like waves at the beach. So I used that as the intro, and then there's like seagulls and stuff, and then the sound of me walking was from when I was walking in New Zealand at like some penguin sanctuary.
Ooh.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
so then I walk to up the beach or up the shore into a jungle, and then there's all kinds of jungle sounds and stuff, and there's like then I use like a binaural type thing. So you have like these waterfall sounds are approaching to you, and then you stop by them, and then there's bells sounding in the distance that I was playing on this tongue drum, and then there's like a dinosaur there who's sleeping, and you're like walking by it, and it's like roaring, like snoring, roaring. Next thing you know, so I end up getting past that. I put that in there just so it wouldn't be too ambient. And then you get to the end of the thing where this bell melody is going on. And then the next track is you're climbing up, you're at the base of this mountain, and you're climbing up this mountain, which turns out it's a volcano, but you don't figure that out till you're like halfway up it, right? And there's like
Ooh.
avalanches and stuff, and you like enter into the volcano, and then the next track is you're inside the volcano, but it's not a regular volcano. It has like some sort of plasma ball thing sputtering, and I was
Okay.
using like a stereo field. Was it by Landscape FM? The stereo field. It's like
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Yes.
It's a weird sort of experimental thing. It's like these pads, and it uses your body as like patch cables.
Right. Right. Capacitive.
So I was yeah, exactly. So I was using that, and it was just like squealing, and so I made these sound effects for what I figured the the heart of the volcano was, right?
Right.
And then that was sort of like the climax of it, and then you pass it, and you're sort of relieved, and and it's sort of like you have these pads, like whatever,
The
and
ascension.
then yeah, and then
Celebratory thing.
and then the final track was my modular world, my first ever modular set.
Oh wow.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that was my album, and then another guy that I met through Instagram, he's like, "Hey, do you want to come on one of my Twitch shows? So you can do like, can you do like a thing like a performance?" So I said, "Okay." So and in the meantime, Jono went and invited me back to do like a longer form thing. So I did two performances. The first one was for Jono, where I did like a super relaxed ambient set with like my tongue drum, and then I had like a spinning top that I had spinning on like an upside down pot lid that was connected to a thing like a contact mic.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
And then that was like hooked up to like guitar effects and stuff. And anyways,
Yes.
there's it's super relaxing if you get a chance to listen to it. It's
No,
called
I'm like,
Spherical
in my
Chill.
brain was already like filing like a bookmark about that specific video.
Yeah. And then in the meantime, I went and I bought a Duduk. It's sort of like a ancient Armenian woodwind. It's a double reed instrument.
Oh, okay.
So it's like if you ever watch Gladiator or whatever, it's that sound of the sort of almost like a mournful type sound.
Mm-hmm.
That's a Duduk. So I started to learn how to do that, and the guy who invited me to be on his show, he's like, "Oh, you should play the Duduk," and I just got it. I was like, "Okay,"
Oh.
and then I decided, okay, I'm going because this guy's into experimental stuff, so I'm gonna go all in on this experimental thing. And I had this like thing called a stone harp, a litho, whatever it's called. It's a stone harp. It's like a marble brick with like slots cut in it.
Oh.
And
Too
then
bad Grace just left. Like she would
yeah,
be super into that.
so when you like hit it and stuff or rub it or whatever, it makes different pitches. So then I did my whole set was like live looping between the Duduk, that stone harp, which was like a 30-pound brick of marble, and then I had my modular. I think I had my hydrosynth going and something else, but I had a loop station that I originally bought from way back when I was just when I first got my piano because I thought, oh, I could do live looping, but I didn't start actually using it until when I started
past the modular
rabbit
hole.
Like for a good like 2 years later is when it's the first time I started using it. And yeah, so I made this thing called Lithosphere, which was that performance. So then I ended up releasing those two things. And the day that I uploaded it to Bandcamp, there was what do you call it? The carpet in the basement was a bit wet, and I was like, "What's that?" And here it turns out there was like a major sewer issue, and it like backed up into the basement, and like was flooding the basement. So I like rescued all my synths and everything, all my music stuff.
Wow.
But I was pretty much out of commission for playing with hardware synths for a year. So I mean, I could play with like maybe I couldn't play my grandmother because it was too big, but I could play like a small Euro rack on a stool and maybe like guitar pedal or some little other tiny instrument. So that was last year.
Wow.
But I thought, well, I've always wanted to like get into like having visualizations for my music. So then I started learning. So I started learning Touch Designer last year. So I started that, and I started doing weird things with Touch Designer, making like I don't know, like different visuals. Like one of the things I was sort of inspired by, there's this visual artist out of he's from Russia, but now he's in London, named Maxim Zestkov, I think his name is. And he makes all these things out of like spheres, and he does these simulations where you have all these spheres that are stacked together, moving, and then and of course he has like synthesizer type, sound design stuff going along with it, and it's super cool. So then I went and I sort of got inspiration from that, and I started making my own little, like I made a space worm thingy. If you look at my Instagram, there's like it's like all these green balls, and they're like twisting and stuff. So I started doing stuff like that, and yeah, so I did that. And then in the meantime, I still had the modular bug, and I had a few slots left open on my rack, right? So I went and I thought, well, if I ever get a mobile setup, I should get like a reverb that's portable. So because using my iPad, the reverb was like overloading my iPad, like it was taking up too much DSP.
Right.
So then I got my I decided I'm gonna get a Qubit Electronics Aurora, and it looked cool, and it does like pitch shifting and stuff, and it looks really pretty if you ever see it. And I got this thing, and it says, "Oh, some of the proceeds go to help out the polar bears with Polar Bears International." And I'm like, "That's so cool! I want to see polar bears."
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like a 2.5 hour flight north of me is like the polar bear capital of the world.
Uh-huh.
And it just so happens Polar Bear International is like has an office there.
Mm-hmm.
So this was in August this past year. I I was on holidays and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna book like a short trip, like a 3-day trip there. So I went and I flew up there to Churchill, Manitoba, which is on the Hudson Bay,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to see polar bears, and they have like aurora borealis 300 days of the year, and they
Mm-hmm.
have whales at that time of year because this was August. They have like 60,000 whales,
Oh,
and they're
wow.
all like swimming, right? So I went whale watching. Like I found Polar Bears International, and I was like, okay, that's cool. It's a building.
Is Qubit based up there? I mean, what's their
No,
tie?
Qubit is in California. I
Oh,
think I don't know if they're
okay.
down in like San Diego or
Oh,
somewhere
okay.
around there. So,
Interesting.
um, so I don't know how they. I think they just thought because they're making something called the Aurora, something that's northern.
Oh, well, yeah, the name of the module. Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why they were like donating some of the proceeds to like help the polar bears
Wow.
because with the
Mm.
climate change and all that stuff with the ice melting, then the
Mhm.
polar bears aren't being able to get their food as easily, like because
Exactly. We were just talking about this the other day.
Literally.
Like
It's so crazy that you were bringing this
I
up.
saw footage of them, snacking on a beluga, and I was like, is
yeah.
that some sort of, like, what do they call it, evolutionary adaptation, or have they
Well,
always fed on belugas?
well, it's funny. One of the tour guides was saying that polar bears aren't really like they're not really carnivores, they're lipivores. So they eat fat because
Oh, okay.
they need
Okay.
they need calories
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to because it's so cold, right? They need
Mhm.
to have all these calories. So that's why belugas are like super fatty and
Yeah, yeah,
seals and stuff,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
they out in the winter, like they don't eat that much in the summer. I mean, they'll eat like berries and stuff on the tundra.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
but then they're just sort of like conserving their energy, like, basking in the sun type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Bears are the
So
best.
uh, I went whale watching on a Zodiac, and
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
there, and I sent you that video of like
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
on the Zodiac, and there was like all these pods of like whales, and they're like swimming along with you, and the propeller on the boat was covered up so they wouldn't hurt the whales.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they liked it, if it was like a jacuzzi to them or something, but they were just following along, and we were just like moseying along, and they were all swimming with us.
Mm-hmm.
And then the the guy who was one of the tour guides, he had like a microphone that he dropped down into the water, and you could hear all the whale songs. And so I was recording that on my phone, and then I went on another whale watching a little bit later on a bigger boat, and they had a better sound system and stuff. So I recorded a bunch of like whale
Wow.
songs,
Wow.
and I found out they weren't as melodic as you
Mm.
think they are. Like as
Mm.
in my album, these whales are singing all nicely in tune,
Right.
Mm.
but instead they're just singing weird, random like squeaks and squeals and stuff.
Mm.
But it's super cool. So I recorded the stuff, and when I got home, I started like doing some granular stuff on it. But I
Oh,
ended up seeing some
yes.
polar bears from the boat, like just being lazy on the shore.
Wait, just for a sec. What was the frequency range of the recorder that you used to capture the whale sounds? I'm just
Well,
curious.
I'm basically just use the sounds that I captured from my video, so they're just like
Oh, so
human
20 to
audible,
20.
like
Okay.
20 to 20,000
Yeah.
hertz.
Okay.
Because I figure, I know if I had it higher, maybe if I had like my good recorder, but I didn't want to like. It was back in the hotel room because I didn't want to
Mm.
like drop it in the water.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I would have
Totally.
been able to get something that was higher frequencies, and then when I pitch it down, I could hear something
Right.
else.
Ooh.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I
Mm.
didn't do that, and
What sample?
That's for another trip.
What sample rate were you at? Just
I was just
curious.
using like a 48.
48. Okay.
K.
Yeah, for the video, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, so like that's I don't know. So I got these sounds, but anyways, so now I'm playing with those sounds.
Mhm.
And um, there was some aurora borealis, but I missed it because it was like raining and stuff.
Mm.
But like the first night I got there, there was northern lights, but I didn't know because I checked at midnight. I went outside and there was nothing. And then the next day I was on this other like thing going out onto the tundra on this big tundra buggy rover,
Mhm.
and a lady who was on the tour, she's like, "Oh, did you see the northern lights last night?" It was like at like 1:30 in the morning. I was like, "Oh," because I had to get up at like 6 in the morning to go on this tour. I'm like, I was like, "No, I didn't." So, um, anyways, long story short, I tried to go on some other tours, but I never did end up seeing it. But I found a webcam that was at the research station there,
Oh.
and when I got back, I started watching that webcam and I recorded one of the nights that had just a few days later after I got back, there was this beautiful aurora. So I recorded like 16 minutes of this and then I like sped it up because it's very slow.
Yeah.
But then when you like sort of time lapse it almost, I like sped it up into like 2 minutes or something.
Mhm.
And it like moves a lot more. And I brought that into Touch Designer and I analyzed the colors, and depending on what the colors are, I was using that as like CV, right? So then I had that hooked up to like my synths and stuff, and then also the virtual synths and VCD Rack. So I had the Aurora Borealis self-composing. I quantized it to like a pentatonic scale or something, right?
Mm.
And I had basically the Northern Lights were playing their own music. I didn't know what they were doing. But so then I posted that on Instagram and stuff, and I thought this is so cool. So then
Yeah.
I wanted to do the same thing with I want to do that on one of my future projects, right? With audio visual stuff.
Heck yeah.
So then I don't know what happened. Oh, jump back now. The repairs to the sewer are finally getting done. And we had this big container, a shipping container that we had just cleaned out, and this is at the end of October.
Mhm.
And I thought, I want to like record something in there. So I brought a bag of like random instruments, like mallets and my my spherical tongue drum, my duduk, and a thunder tube. Like a thunder
Mhm.
tube is like, if you know what that is, it's like a sort of a cylinder with a drum head on it with a spring attached to it.
Uh-huh.
And then when you shake it, it like makes like thunder sounds.
Oh, that's so cool.
So um, I went in there the last day we had this container, and I did like two sort of short improvised performances, just doing random stuff, hitting the walls with like mallets or with my fists, rubbing friction mallets on things, playing the duduk, and I had my Zoom recorder recording it all. And then so I had two performances worth of stuff, but I mean it wasn't like awesome, like all coherent, because I just recorded doing a bunch of random stuff. But then I decided to like take that and make another. I made this short little EP. It's I released in December, called Container Experiments.
Yeah.
And it's literally, I took I want to make like a sort of concept thing where you go into this container and you start off in the real world, just with like the real reverb of the inside of this shipping container. Because originally I thought, when I went in there, it's like, oh, this is amazing, this reverb, right? I thought it'd be like a cathedral. But then when I was there, I realized it's more like you're playing in a big tin box. And so I did some calculations about like standing waves and stuff and what frequencies might resonate. And sure enough, those frequencies resonated, but then they were like causing my recorder to peak. So whatever. I had all this cool footage, and I chopped it up into little pieces, and I ran some of it through granular synths. And I wanted to make sort of this narrative where I was like starting off in our world, and then you're slowly like going into like another reality, like another universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then so like the second track was like me doing like a percussion solo on the container, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Like
the
the
third
container
track,
becomes the instrument.
the instrument. And then the third track is like I was doing, you're like completely in another universe. And you have
Yes.
times going forwards and backwards with the bells going backwards and forwards. And then I had sort of like little things of the Duduk going on, sort of just to add sort of a mood to it.
I can
Um,
imagine, yes.
and then the last track, I want to bring you back to reality, back to where you started in this container. So the first half of it is like the hyper real Duduk sounding granular synth. And then there's the sound of like airplanes that were flying over, but like amplified, right, and everything. And you're sort of like coasting in on this back to earth on these like engine sounds and like the Duduk sounds. Um, and yeah, then when you get to the the final, you get back into the container, and then I had it totally unedited. You could hear what it actually sounded like, and the sounds of semi trailers or semis driving by, and like
Yeah, back to
birds and stuff.
reality.
And then I leave the container and I shut the door. It's this big boom. And that's it.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's so cool.
yeah. So that was end of, or that I released that in the beginning of December. But then in the meantime, with my audio visual stuff, I was thinking I've always wanted to do like an immersive media type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So that is when I'd contacted a guy in the summertime at our local planetarium, and I'm like, hey, how do I like rent this? I don't know if rent the place.
Yes.
How do I do a show at the planetarium?
Yes.
And,
We
and
talk
he's
about
like,
this a lot.
and he's like, um, this is just after COVID type thing. He's the only guy running the planetarium, so he's like, well, we don't really have the resources to help you out on it. I mean, you could rent it, but it'd be really, really expensive.
Right.
So then I started looking into like different residencies or whatever, but I missed a deadline on like one out in Montreal. But then I'm like, forget this, I can do this myself, right? So I have like touch designer and stuff. So then that's what I started working on in January, was like trying to figure out how to make like an immersive media thing with like,
this is so crazy, because this is when we connected, is that you were
yeah,
doing this and we were talking about wanting this experience, and like somehow we got connected right at this moment when we're talking about space whales and the idea of a planetarium feeling like an aquarium.
yeah. So my concept is like, because I went and I have Blender and stuff for doing 3D modeling, but I'm not that good at it. But I found an app on my phone called Nomad Sculpt,
Okay.
and so it's a lot easier because it's you're drawing with your hand, right?
Yes.
So I went and I sculpted. It's almost like sculpting out of clay a beluga whale, because I had seen beluga whales in the summertime, and I took a picture of it. Like I saw pictures, and I was like, okay, I can sort of sculpt a beluga whale. And then I brought it into Touch Designer, and then I was like applying like sort of deforming transformations on it to make it move and stuff. And then I started putting some of the sounds of like that I recorded from the summertime to the beluga whales. So I had real beluga whale sounds with this whale that's sort of twisting around and sort of swimming.
Yes.
So
being eaten by the polar bear.
No, there's no polar bears here.
No polar bears in this universe. Polar bears can't. No, can polar bears swim? They can't breathe underwater.
Yeah, they can swim.
They
can swim.
But yeah, so then my idea for this immersive thing was to be like surrounded by like aurora, like on some weird ice planet.
Yes.
And then maybe have some space whales swimming through the sky, right? And then like, with like whale songs and stuff. And then I want to be like following along with the whales, and then like basically go on a sort of a journey with them through
like
this.
Their magical guides. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then while you're surrounded by like northern lights and
yes, oh my god, this is my dream
of
like everything.
I seek to understand thee.
Tangent. Welcome in, Tangents. I saw you.
Hey, um, yeah. So that's what I've been working on, and then this past month I've been learning how to make like terrains and stuff in a
Oh
3D.
yes.
So then I was playing basically with like height maps in Touch Designer. You can do noise. Like Touch Designer is very much like modular. Like it's
Mm,
just
Oh wow.
modular for visual, right?
wow.
And
Hmm.
you can even connect your modular system, like your Buchla or whatever, right? You can
Wow.
send signals to get it into the computer somehow, and then you can send it through OSC um,
Hmm.
into like Touch Designer,
Hmm.
Okay.
and you can like do whatever you want, right?
That's yeah. That sounds
Uh,
cool.
so the music, you could have like visuals playing the music, or you could have
Hmm.
your music playing the visuals, or you could have sort of a symbiotic type relationship between the
Yeah.
audio and the visuals. So
Mm-hmm.
I started working on that stuff and making terrains out of like noise, which is like
Yes.
they have noise. Um, they call them. There's different operators. They're like modules, but
Mm-hmm.
say there's like tops are like topol. What are they called? Whatever they're called tops. They're like 2D stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they're 2D operations. So I would bring in that, and then um, I would apply that to like a material, and then I could be like making like mountainous terrain out of like noise.
You're
And
definitely
then,
making this seem like, hey, anybody could do this, and I'm like,
well, it
I
is.
don't think
It's
so.
literally
So
like
like
watching.
texture, you're making texture out of noise.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
that's
you have
cool.
these textures, and then
Sweet.
you're taking pictures, and then depending on how black it is, or how white it is, or what grayscale, that's how high it is, right? And then you have these normal maps which show which way the your facets of all of your mountains or whatever are pointing.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm.
went in I did an experiment a couple weeks ago, where I took two pictures of like these terrains that I made, and then I was like crossfading between them, and then sure enough, the whole terrain like morphed from like
Morphed. Yeah.
one like location into another. So I'm like, okay, I got to figure out how to do this. So I'm still trying to figure out. I figured out how to do the sort of planetarium hemisphere dome thing with the
Okay.
aurora,
Okay.
and now I'm trying to figure out how to make somewhat realistic terrain. And I want to have my whales swimming through the sky, and then
Yes.
they make sounds, and then like it morphs the terrain and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and that's pretty much where I'm at this very second. And I'm like trying to
Wow.
learn how to do this stuff.
That's
Spoken like a
sick.
true like person who's experienced like Sarah Belle Reid and what
Yeah.
like this is just striking
Well,
all those chords from our
When you
conversation
say
with
when you
her.
say morph, it makes me think of like some sort of like joystick or crossfader or something. Are you gonna have
yeah,
some kind of like physical control?
I could, but I probably won't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, I'm sure I could do it, but I'm trying to make like a short film, like maybe like
Oh,
10 minutes
okay.
long.
So
Yeah.
it's more
So
of a
I'm
okay.
probably going to be using LFOs
Mm-hmm.
More
or some sort
automation.
of or automation or something to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah. Okay.
That
Uh,
makes sense. Oh wow. I love this because like everything that you've said is like really like just such a journey of like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'm going to try that. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Like everything is
Hmm.
just like seems like it's happening so fast for you.
well,
And when you first like said like when we first started talking about space whales, it's just a thing that we talk about with people. And you sent me that video. At first, I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Like you have this one thing about space whales, right? Like, oh, this one video." And then when I went to your page, I was like, "Oh, this is a journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a whole." And this whole
A whole
chat
thing.
was getting to hear that entire journey that led you to the
well,
space whales, and I
the
love
funny
that
thing
so
is,
much.
like the past couple months, all of a sudden, different people, like other synth friends that I know, that you
Hmm.
know,
It's
were all on your
crazy.
show. It was like Sarah, and then Todd, and then Carolyn, and then
Yes,
Jono,
yes.
and
It was all pointing here. I could see it
and it
now.
all just.
I mean,
And
this
then
is
I checked,
destiny. Yeah.
and then I checked your stuff. I was like, "Whoa, you're doing like Buchla stuff and like cool sci-fi stuff and these awesome like space vocals." And I
Mm.
was like, "Oh, this is like totally my jam."
I know, right? Like you're telling us all this stuff, and I'm like, yep. That's how my brain works.
All right, we're checking the boxes.
That's how I would think of it too. I love it because it's so fun to hear, like someone tell the journey of their album through sort of a space adventure, and like I was so hooked, and I was like, I love this so much.
Yes.
This is how I think about
it's like,
music
is this
too.
a genre?
I know. Like people who have been dreaming about planetariums are like a genre, and we were like finding each other through the internet.
Maybe we can,
Yeah.
you know, make this steep price happen, you know, if we band together.
Well,
yeah,
right now,
the $20K we need to raise to rent the one planetarium.
Yeah, we got Tangent Universes on the chat here. We're close already.
Well, I went and I ended up joining like immersive something society or something, where
Ooh.
people who do like full dome stuff for that, they're like full dome producers, so they make films and experiences, or like, you know, like performing a musical show, and then have like you're playing in a planetarium, and then like the visuals are reacting to your, you know, playing your drums or whatever, right?
There's a secret society for these people?
There is. And it's crazy. And then I realized this is a totally different world that I never knew existed. And they have like festivals around the world. And so I'm like, okay, what if I make like a short film, and maybe it'll be passable enough to be like, you know, that maybe somebody would want to play it, and then people could watch it on different festivals and in different planetariums and stuff.
Oh, yes, exactly.
There you go.
The cool thing is, though,
like a traveling
because
show.
because I'm doing this all in 3D anyways, I could do it like 360 videos, like VR type stuff.
Yes.
Right.
Although I don't know how to do like stereo VR yet. That's a little.
What about
beyond me.
Atmos? Would you? Because when you started talking about immersive, I immediately thought of Atmos. I was like, is he doing Atmos?
That's a March problem. Because I want to do something in surround sound, but I've never done that before. I've only done stereo and I've done binaural stuff, but I've never done anything in surround. So I'm still trying to figure out. Like I have Deer VR Pro, but I was thinking maybe looking into that Spat Revolution from Flux Immersive. And I know Sarah was using that in her Ambisonic Dome show.
Yeah.
So she's used it for a little bit, although she says she's not a pro on it or anything. But so I'm gonna be exploring that maybe next month. Hopefully, try to figure out how to do something in surround sound, and to go along with my like sort of visuals of whatever I come up with.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love this so much because you like painted that picture. I'm
so
like there.
exciting.
I'm hanging out in the Aurora with the space wheels right now.
Yeah. So if you look on my YouTube there, I think it was.
Let me see. Let me drop your
my latest one. It might be my latest video. There's a 360 video, and if you're on your phone, you can like look around on your phone at like the northern lights and stuff, and you're surrounded by a bunch of like icy mountains and stuff. And it's a minute long, and then I just used the first track from my first album because it's very spacey, and I have that going on at the same time, and it's only like a minute long, but that was sort of like my first prototype to see, is this even doable? And it sort of is.
You could just put it on a loop and say like 8 hours of Aurora Borealis.
Right.
I could totally do that.
People
totally
love to
do
just, it's like an interactive screensaver kind of vibe.
I think the main thing would be just about like hard drive space because you know it's like a 4K video or whatever.
Exactly.
So.
There's a reason it's a minute.
Yeah. Oh man, that's still a limitation, I guess. You're right.
I know.
So I'm trying to see what I can do if I can get like a 10-minute video going on here. But we'll see.
Next step
we'll
up
see
is
how
10
it
minutes.
goes.
I love it.
We'll see how it goes.
Well, we're very excited to be able to like tune in again and check in with you like down the road, not too far because you're gonna be off in space if we don't keep up with you. Obviously, you're moving in hyperspeed. So I'm glad that we're connected. This is why I love bringing people on Twitch who we only know on Instagram, because Instagram's where we like have conversations as well as our Discord. But just like meeting people and stuff, and it like makes you like 3D and real for us, and then like we can still like chat and like keep up with you because you get to post like what you're doing on your Instagram and YouTube, and we can like all stay in this like web of inspiration about space whales together.
Yeah, and I end up putting more stuff on Instagram than on YouTube because I find YouTube is like so much pressure. You know, you have to like
Well, you have to like
make it
tag
just
everything
perfect.
and yeah, there's just so many
And
pieces to it.
There's an
where
expectation.
Instagram,
Yeah.
where Instagram is just like, oh, I spinned a top today and it's triggering my modular.
Yeah.
Yeah, like remember we used to just put things on YouTube because we needed to share the video with somebody?
Yeah.
And now Instagram's that.
Yes.
That
Well,
makes
I
sense.
see you've been up on like YouTube since like what 2014 or something, right?
Probably our first song that we put out, we probably started our, all our pages, all at the same time.
Well, that's when we started as a
probably
band.
Didn't
probably
didn't really do much on YouTube until like 2019 or 2020 even.
So when did you guys get into like all the modular stuff? Like, was it right from the beginning, or was it like sort of a
reverse interview questions? I love it.
2012.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
But like modular wise, yeah.
But I've been into synths like pretty heavy even before then, like like virtual analog stuff, like since
nice.
the early 2000s. But I just
like
happened
electronic music production.
I just happened to be like a rave kid, so I wanted to see how the sausage was made, and it led me to synths and samplers, and so I've just been in it ever since. And now it's like interesting because there just seems to be so much more interest in synths.
It's crazy.
And it's really cool. Like it's fun to have like so many people to talk to.
There's
about it.
the playground is like stacked, Like we got the best toys and the best people, and like it's just a blast.
Yeah.
Well, then, while I was like learning about like synth and stuff, I started watching like these documentaries, like "I Dream of Synths," like hardcore edition, right?
Yeah.
So then I watched that, and I'm like, wow, there's other people doing this stuff. And then I guess with like the pandemic, a lot more people got into it.
Yeah. Exactly.
So there's a lot of us started off all around the same time of like modular starting in 2020. Like I started off with like my analog synths in 2019. So it's been sort of just like this going down nonstop rabbit holes for the past bunch of years.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like everything that you've like sort of discovered, you've been able to like be productive with in a way that leads you to the next thing and the next thing.
It's just like you're building on everything you learn. You're like, well, I know this. How is that applicable to something else? Or just sort of thinking weird things out of the box, just thinking, like, I don't know, like I have, what if I go and I dangle this little dude on something and it hits like something, and you have contact mics doing weird things. And that's just a random thought, right? I'm like, oh, it's a keychain and you can dangle. And so I took a patch cable and I had him like zip lining across.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it's just thinking about weird things that aren't really like, I don't even know if I guess I never think about genre, but I guess I'm like doing ambient stuff.
Right, we don't know either.
A lot of us feel that way, yeah.
Like I don't know that much about like drum machines or anything like that, and that's not really my thing. But I love like heaps and heaps of reverb and delay.
Yeah, that's
so I'm building on everything that I learn, and I'm like, well, if I take this random thing, what can I do with that? And I know how to do that from something else I did like 2 years ago. And come up with
those
weird
fun
stuff.
Moments, right, when like something comes together that you've been kind of developing over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And you have those moments, and like that's really what I think it's about for a lot of us, is just like you're getting to have those moments, you're getting to play, you're getting to see what happens. And that's really the point. That's the genre. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like the genre is that we're all very curious and very playful, and we just want to get as deep as we can.
We're explorers.
Exactly.
Yeah, there we go. We want to ride the wave.
It's an exploration genre. For
sure.
Like go ahead.
Oh no, I was just thinking about like Todd Barton. He was always saying about follow the sound and stuff like that. So yeah,
Exactly. Oh, that's a beautiful way to close this out. A
Yeah.
little Todd Barton quote. I love it. Follow the sound. That's exactly what it's all about. I think what we all learned here today was just that reinforcement of that enthusiasm that this all started with our ears. We heard some sounds and we went, "What is that? How can I make that sound?" Right?
yeah.
So that's the heart of
Curiosity.
it, and it makes me so happy to hear
just an
your
endless
story.
trail of curiosity and discovery, and it seems like you just had a lot of luck, and you were fortunate to just keep finding the next thing.
Well, and I mean, it's like you just take inspiration from whatever's around you. So like on my holidays, I had sort of a staycation, right? So I went to a park and there I brought my duduk and I saw a deer there. So I went up to the deer and I started playing the duduk and they started listening to me and stuff. And I was like, this is so cool. So it's just finding inspiration from like absolutely anything. It doesn't have to be big or anything. It could be.
You're so right.
That's definitely been a recurring theme on Synth Friends is interaction
with nature and
with
animals.
nature and animals with your playing.
Yes,
so like that's
so cool.
you're in the club.
I love that image.
That's awesome.
Oh my god, I wish that was a video. That's amazing. Well, we have your links here, and we want everyone to know to follow you, check out your website, follow you on Instagram and YouTube, and definitely go to Bandcamp to listen to all the music that Jared described for us so amazingly, like we were in a sci-fi movie. You're going to find that at all those links, and we're going to stay Synth Friends. And what we like to say is that we like to keep the chain going, so you get to like recommend someone for us to connect with later, and we have like a whole trail of breadcrumbs that leads us to each other now, which I love, because there's these like points of reference.
It's quite a cool web. Connect. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really excited to see more of what you're doing, and I'm just so happy you got to join us today. So thank you so much for being here, and spending your evening with us to tell us your story.
Thanks so much for having me, and it's really cool, meeting other people who are also, on their own journeys, but we're all like seeing what everyone else is doing and just like getting inspiration from each other.
Yes. Really, we are on this sort of this adventure that we sometimes like hook up with each other. Sometimes we just see what the other person's doing, right? Like we're passing along on this trail, and like that enriches it so much. It's like so key to what like lights everybody's fires up. So yeah, Space Whales Forever Tangents. Thanks for joining us.
Space Whales Forever.
We're just so stoked about all these connections. So
Space Whales 5 ever.
Any last like questions, high fives, shout outs for Jared before we let him go? Yes, lots of love in the chat for you.
Thanks for everyone who showed up.
Yeah. And this
I was like telling everybody I knew, I was like, oh, come watch the Galaxy Electric show.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad. Any new friends, we're just so happy to meet anybody who's into Space Whales and chasing the sound or following the sound. Yes, Helper Monkey, I saw you in there. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Chris.
It would have to be 6 ever. Yeah, exactly.
It's funny, Helper Monkey was also in that
that's
creative
right.
mentorship program.
There's many layers and crossovers here. And it's so nice to meet some new friends here. First time chat, Thor Inside and Posy Gamer was both new for us today. Yes, the synth history. I know, the synth origin story, we like to say. And Kenneth is here as early as usual. I love it.
Cool.
Yes. Okay. Well, honestly, like I think there's going to be some sharing of your music in our Discord, and there's going to be some more connecting with you that we're going to want to do. And we'd love to have you on again and connect with whoever you want to, connect us with to keep the Synth Friends chain going.
Yeah, it's great meeting you. I mean, we just met each other like literally an hour and a half
ago. I know.
Exactly.
It's so crazy when you have all these connections already, how it can feel like you've known each other forever and have just like always known like where you are in the universe and space music.
Now I look forward to catching Aurora Borealis with you.
Yeah, we'll be watching your video.
Cool.
For sure. All right. Well, you have a good one. We'll see you soon. We'll see you on the internet. And thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
See ya.
Take care.
All right, let's get Okay.
Let's get our raid on.
That was so fun. I was going to say something after the stream, and I can't remember now what it was going to be. But I was like, oh, I'll save that for after. Because I know he was on a tight timeline. Hopefully it comes to me before this is over. Otherwise, I'll drop it in the Discord. I feel like it was something important I had to say, but we'll just let it come back.
If it was important, it will come back.
We'll let it come back. But thank you all so much for being here. This was super fun. This was like sci-fi music story time. Like that was, super dope.
It was, I rode that like a wave.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
I wanted to talk about surfing.
That was the thing I was thinking too.
But I didn't want to like open up a whole can of worms.
Yes. Oh, polar bear hype. Yes, make mistakes. That's amazing. Oh, Obama's Weed Man. I'm so glad you thought this was a good one. You would know. Good night, tangents.
Oh man,
yes,
this was
so much love.
This was an epic.
This was
experience.
Great.
Like I like want to review this for my own personal.
We're watching a show set in Antarctica right now that we're checking out.
Yeah.
And
they put me right back.
This is
in that
just
world.
we're in just this weird cosmic alignment with Ice Locus right now, and I don't know why, but I
really wanted
me so
to
happy.
snow again.
That's what's so weird to me too. I'm like, we usually get 6 months of winter, but this year it's been like 6 months of fall, spring.
There was a pretty nasty one, but like I kind of.
It wasn't enough.
Yeah, I'm like.
I don't want to say, I don't want to.
Come back, snow.
I don't want to call for something I don't actually want.
That's true. I don't want anything to happen that is going to be bad.
Oh my gosh. Is Grace really streaming right now? That'll be so exciting to raid into her. She was just in our chat. Yes. Oh, and everyone, shout out Triobium is Ice Locus. So that's, we got to shout you out there for the Twitch link. I didn't grab that one. Yes, surfing the wavetables.
Yes.
Oh, wow. You've had no snow this year? Yeah, it's been a little too warm. It's a little too crazy. I'm not into it. But I will say I've been enjoying the outdoors a lot more than I normally would.
Grace. Yeah, we've been taking walks. It's been amazing.
It's been really nice to be like, oh, it's a nice spring day. I don't even need a jacket.
We've been stealing walks.
We should not be getting to have. Just like the polar bears taking the belugas they don't normally take.
I mean, apparently they do.
Yeah, apparently.
I confirmed that is actually normal for them to hunt the beluga because it makes sense. They're like heat seeking in on the fat.
Totally.
And belugas are like pure fat. So.
Crawl space. I will always remember the flying space whales. Oh, crawl space. Yeah, I didn't even know you were here. So much to take in. Yeah. Honestly, like, his Instagram is rad, and there's some really cool space whale videos on there of him, like, using the touch designer with his music. I mean, there's just so much. Yeah. Yay! Thank you all so much for being here.
It's one of those where you, like, get stuck on the loop, and you just, like, forget that you're watching the same thing.
Oh, yeah. Like, it's like a 15-second loop.
Oh, I'm like...
You don't even care. You're just sucked in for life now.
Yeah.
Oh, you were so busy processing. I totally get that. I think we were too. We were like, the whole story was just unfolding. I kept wanting to be like, but what about the space whales? And he would like take you on the next curve.
There was no need to interject.
There wasn't. I guess just final thoughts are, make sure you're in the Discord. We're voting pretty heartily for the movie night. Do I have anything else to share? Just that tape loops.
I mean,
we found a box of tape loops. They're back in stock.
It's gonna be silent
but
running.
They'll be sold out soon. I know. We all know what's gonna win.
Like we're excited. We're stoked for Bruce Dern. Let's do it.
Oh, I'm so stoked.
Young Bruce Dern.
Yeah, silent running's one of our faves. Shout out to Obama's Weed Man for getting us the movie. As we have a wish list for that to keep our movie library going. So anytime someone gets us a movie, that's usually the one that wins because there's a reason they got it, right?
I mean,
it's one we don't have yet.
It feels rude not to watch.
It feels rude not to watch Silent Running.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm so glad we found more tape loops too. For some reason, we were like, we were like checking out some like inventory or whatever. Like that's really something we do. I'm so bad at that, but. I noticed that it said sold out, and I was like, is that really sold out? I guess that box is empty. Okay.
As a matter of fact, if things are sold out, like, just shoot us an email.
Send us a message. It's probably not true.
We will probably correct it.
That's so funny.
And
there's always
Thank
something.
you for the fact that
there's
you
always like
reminded
another
us.
box or something hiding somewhere. I don't know why that is. But yeah, we found another box of tape loops.
Honestly, I can probably always figure out a way to get you a tape loop. So like, just hit me up.
Always hit us up. There's always something we got. We
Yeah.
got some tape on a loop for you. We can find. Anyway, speaking of tape loops, our good friend Grace Harpsit is streaming right now, so we are gonna raid into her because she also just put out a tape. So I'm really stoked for that. Thank you all so much for another amazing hang, and we'll see you Saturday. And I'm excited to do a synth stream on Sunday because we missed last week and it was the Super Bowl and all that weirdness. But we're gonna stream this Sunday, I think at noon.
All that weirdness.
So we'll get back to
all
the
those
studio.
Adam Driver commercials.
Oh, it was
Rihanna
too much.
halftime shows.
It was way too much. But we'll see you on the other side in Grace's stream, and have a great night. Rest of your week. Kick off to your weekend, and we'll be seeing you around.
Ben
Fun,
Affleck
fun, fun.
with the Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh my gosh, so funny. Cheers, Kenneth. She knows what she's doing. Here we go. Yes, we're getting. Yes, it worked.
Woohoo!
Yay!